I would simply say, on a broad front, that all through this, whether in terms of war or in terms of diplomacy or statesmanship, Iran has shown extreme maturity. They have not overplayed things, they have not escalated things, they reacted, they did not escalate.
I just want to know from you, does it remain fragile?
It is like walking on eggshells. You never know when one of the eggs will break. I think to answer your question, one has to go back to February, 28 February, when this war started. America was considered an invincible power. America and Israel combined were considered immense power who could bulldoze anything and anyone in the world. But the reverse has happened. They've got a bloody nose. Not just a bloody nose, they've been humiliated. Their nose has been rubbed and brown. That is why Trump is agreeing to terms which are humiliating.
Hello and welcome. My name is Sanket Upadhyay. You're watching me on The Federal. The show is called AI with Sanket. This is the AI of news because news in India today requires not artificial but analytical intelligence. Finally, after months of war between Iran and the United States, with drones flying, with foreign nationals hit, Indians killed, both by Iranian attacks as well as American, a lot of commentary on whether the Indian response was the same as it was in the case of an Iranian attack. Was it the same in the case of an American attack? Let's just keep that aside. The good news is that finally a peace accord could be signed. The terms and conditions of peace to return to the world is being signed. America and Iran seem to be in agreement broadly over opening the Strait of Hormuz. The blockades will be removed and normalcy will be restored. It is going to take time because a lot of destruction has taken place. For the supply chain to get back to normal, it's going to take, some people suggest, even 6 months, up to a year. But the big question here is, in this long war, who really was the victor? We know that there was large-scale destruction and the economy of Iran was battered, so war was not good for them. We also know that Trump had a loss of face, whether in his own country or all over the world, and he desperately wanted to come out of this war, of this situation, with all the chest thumping that he usually does. So in a situation like this, where finally peace is being given a chance, who won? What came out of this? And where does this leave this great power of the world called the United States of America under the leadership of its president, Donald Trump? We discuss. All right, joining us right now is former diplomat, Ambassador Rajiv Dogra. Ambassador Dogra, thank you very much for speaking to us. There is a lot of perspective that is required, which has led to at least us reaching a situation where we are talking peace and we are talking about looking for solutions that will, show signs of ebbing as far as this war is concerned. I want to know your initial reactions as to who had the upper hand, according to you, in ultimately agreeing to this deal.
Well, let's hope it's not only ebbing, as you put it, but it is a long term peace that will hold in the region, because for the simple reason that whatever has happened has not just affected the region but affected the world at large, especially India, because we depend on Gulf for a lot of things. We'll talk about it as we go along. Uh, but your second point about who has the upper hand or who has outsmarted the other, uh, I would simply say, on a broad front, that all through this, whether in terms of war or in terms of diplomacy or statesmanship, Iran has shown extreme maturity. They have not overplayed things, they have not escalated things, they reacted, they did not escalate. And when they reacted decisively, both in terms of war and in terms of diplomacy. Uh, in terms of diplomacy, I think one of their trump cards, sorry for the pun, but one of their trump cards was exactly using a psychologist to read Trump. Every move that Trump made, before responding to it, Iran consulted one of its better known psychologists to assess the state of mind, if at all he was in that state, when Trump sent another message to Iran. And they responded according to the assessment and advice given by the psychologists. Naturally, they had their own diplomats and politicians to sort of fine tune that message, but they went to this extent that they had an overall picture in view before making their move diplomatically.
Ambassador Dogra, I just want to know from you the longevity. You said that don't call this ebbing. Let's hope that this brings about lasting peace. But we do know that the track record suggests otherwise. It is only and only the economic cost that can get both these sides to agree that fine, let's end the war and open the Strait of Hormuz and remove the blockades. Apart from that, we know that even in the case of the ceasefire, there was instant violation by Israel and then instant provocation from both sides. So it was a very difficult period in which this peace accord has been struck. I just want to know from you, does it remain fragile?
Well, it is like walking on eggshells. You never know when one of the eggs will break. I think to answer your question, one has to go back to February, 28 February, when this war started. Uh, the reasons then were Israel's ambition and Netanyahu's personal ambition from the Israel viewpoint. Israel thought that it would become the overlord of the entire Middle East, or at least the Gulf, if they succeed. Netanyahu had personal agenda in it. That is because of the various criminal charges he's facing. So the longer a war continued or he emerged victorious out of it, the chances of his going to jail became that much less. As far as Trump is concerned, the sword which is really hanging on his head is a person called Epstein. Uh, Now, he thought it would be a good diversion because the files were coming out, the photographs were coming out in driblets, but they were coming out. So he thought, like Venezuela, it'll be a quick operation, go in, get out, and get all the oil in the world. That was his second intention, which has been a neocon, American neocon ambition from the time of Senior Bush. That is why the first Gulf War started. So Trump thought that it'll be a quick way of making money for his family, for his friends, and finally for America itself. Now, none of this came through because they did not expect the kind of response that Iran gave. So ultimately, it was the losses on the battlefield which convinced Trump that if he goes any longer, the entire game will be over. Already, America was turning massively against the war, and his own personal ratings as president had dropped to 31%. So he saw the writing on the wall, as it were, and he was looking for a way out. Iran was playing its cards very, very carefully, and I would say very, very astutely because it knew where it had Trump. But the Netanyahu factor is still an unknown because he even after the memorandum of understanding, the points became public, he said that he is not going to stop attacking Lebanon, which is one of the essentials as far as Iran is concerned. So, to come back to answer your question as to whether it is fragile and how long it will last as long as Israel does not play the spoiler like it has been playing so far.
Now, that is the tricky bit, isn't it, Ambassador Dogra? We know that whether it was the ceasefire or even his, if you go back and turn the pages of history, Israel has been accused of sabotaging any attempt of bringing about peace in the region. They have their own agenda, and sometimes they don't even listen to the Americans. There is a huge pressure group in America, a Jewish pressure group, which kind of promotes what Israel wants. This whole philosophy and dream of a greater Israel, which only instigates conflict in that region. So I just want to know from you, what are those circumstances which may force Trump to either break away his support from Israel, or number two, uh, basically say that I don't agree with what Israel is doing, and I'm going to go again against Israel if they provoke.
Well, there are two parts to your question. One is the Israel's attitude itself, and second, as to what a desperate Trump can do in order to get out of Israel's clutches. As far as the first part is concerned, uh, in '67, in the Israel, Egypt, etc. war, Israel was at the point of losing. It was just a stroke of military genius on part of some Israeli generals that they sort of turned the tables, and it was a victory for Israel. This time they have not been able to master Iran or its tactics or its war fighting ability. So this time it is different. And the Jews themselves, I have friends in the West who for years have been telling me that we are sick and tired of this war. We may be living in England or France or whatever, but we know that our relatives and friends are suffering because constant state of war is psychologically ruinous besides the casualties it entails, the 7th October being the most horrible example of it. So the right minded Jews are, of course, not in favor of any more uh, bloodshed. But there are sections within Israel, the conservative sections, which want to carry on with their agenda. And that agenda simply is domination of the Arab world and the greater Israel dream that they've been having. Now, after this war, I think even they would need to think and reflect as to whether that is possible any longer. As far as Trump is concerned, he really has no choice. Uh, Epstein will now pursue him to the bitter end because there's no war. Even if we were to grab Cuba, for example, which could very well be his target, an easy target like Venezuela, he thinks, even if that happens, the Americans are really fed up of his tricks and of his lies and of his follies. The second thing which is coming out increasingly in America and even in American media, which uncharacteristically has been very submissive to Trump, the fact is that Trump's family and friends have made their pile, financial pile. They were already hugely rich, but they have made their financial pile out of this crisis also. Because Trump's statements going up and down in terms of war gave them the opportunity to bet for or against the market and make their millions, if not billions. So that is coming out because those millions or billions are coming out of ordinary American pockets who've invested in stock exchange thinking that it is a well-regulated share market, which is not the case as some of the driblets in news are coming out. So Trump has to get out of the clutches of Israel, which he's realized to his own cost now, because that again has cost him a lot of public support, uh, and face the consequences of a war which was not necessary at all, and also face the consequences of his misdeeds, personal misdeeds, and his family's misdeeds.
Ambassador Dogra, two ways to look at America, and I would like to bring in and tell our viewers that Ambassador Dogra's book, latest book, is going to come out in July. It's called How Nations Fail and the Unmaking of America's World. And it is so timely that you have written a book like this and we are discussing. It's just the perfect context, Ambassador Dogra. You see, one is Trump and his idiosyncrasies. What else do I call it? And the other is American strategy. So, do you feel that this is going to be the unmaking of America's world or the unmaking of America's world under Trump? And that somehow, if Trump goes, then America's world can be restored.
Well, that's a good question and a timely question. Uh, See, my book covers the failures of nations uh, as nations, empires, and civilizations. So it's a book which covers 5,000 plus years of history of the world. And I have given concrete examples of how nations went downwards. What were the reasons? Whether it was the people who were responsible or was it the leaders? Finally, I came to the conclusion that it is the leaders who drive the policy and who drive agendas. So, in this case, as you rightly pointed out, whether after Trump, America will have a rebirth of sorts, bounce back, and become great again, or the greatest again, because it is already great and it will continue to be great for some time. Uh, I have my doubt whether, in this case, America can roll back all the negatives that it has accumulated. And it is not just one leader. Biden, for example, was not a great leader. And even before him, some of the other leaders, for example, Bush Jr., uh, he may have had his very good points. He may have been honest in his intentions, but there were flaws in his policies. After all, Bush Sr. set off this entire neocon business. So Americans, that is why, in 70s and 80s, there was a term which was used called ugly American. So Americans have been known to be pushy, have been known to be self-centered, and have been known to drive their own agenda for America's benefits. And that is why leaders and countries throughout the world have from time to time felt very, very disabused and very, very cheated by America and its policies. I would quote for you what the Cambodian crown prince or the ruler said at the end of Vietnam War when America was pulling out of Vietnam, but before that ditching Cambodia. He said, "My mistake was that we trusted you Americans." That can be repeated a number of times by people in Iraq, people in Libya, people in Syria, people in Afghanistan. For nothing, for 40, 50 years, they've been cheated by America, Pakistan combined. So, the answer to your question as to whether the unmaking of America's world is because of Trump, uh, yes, partly it is because of Trump and his policies and his foolish behavior at times. But America now reminds me of a stage when Roman Empire was on its way down. The Roman Empire was one of the greatest in world history. And yet, because of its emperors like Nero, Caligula, and some of the others, it started going down the hill and there was no stoppage. And when it overextended itself, when it started spending much more than its huge fabled wealth, then To divert people's attention, it used to organize what were called the bread and circuses events, for the fights, the gladiator fights, for example, in Colosseum in Rome, which were really humans versus humans in an animal sense. And I was appalled to see that yesterday on his birthday and on the 250th anniversary of America, Trump has organized just a similar kind of a fight, the cage fight in the lawns of White House. And that fight is between two men who go at each other till the point that either the other person, the person who's getting defeated, is at the point of getting killed or bleeding profusely. So, this event yesterday reminded me of the stage that Roman Empire in its decline was. And I am convinced that American power, it may remain a power for a long time, as I pointed out in my book, but it will no longer be the greatest power in the world. China is waiting in the wings, and America is no longer a power which will be obeyed by countries across the world, as Iran has shown.
And
Iran,
Ambassador Dogra, do you feel that this war and the way it has played out and Trump has been the way he is has actually expedited the process of America's decline all over the world in powers and countries now thinking to themselves that we have to imagine more and more a world beyond America's control?
in fact, that's a very, very good question, Sanket. Uh, and it's not just America, because there was a belief, even amongst Indians, us Indians, who have thousands of years of history behind them and civilization behind them, and tales of great warriors. After all, Mahabharat, if you think back and seriously look at it, uh, proves what I'm going to tell you. It was a much smaller army that defeated the huge army of Duryodhan. Uh, there is a belief that small powers cannot take on big powers. In fact, in India China context, it has been said that economically and militarily we are weaker, so we cannot take on China. Uh, Now, recent events have proven otherwise. Ukraine has taken on Russia. That is why the war has gone on now for more than 4 years without Russia making, any significant gains. In fact, Russian economy is not in good shape, and its military tactics and strategy have been questioned all along. The same with America plus Israel. Who could have imagined in January of this year that if America and Israel decide to take on a country, any country except for China, that that country would be able to resist them for more than a week or 2 weeks? America was considered an invincible power. America and Israel combined were considered immense power who could bulldoze anything and anyone in the world. But the reverse has happened. They've got a bloody nose. Not just a bloody nose, they've been humiliated. Their nose has been rubbed and ground. That is why Trump is agreeing to terms which are humiliating. So after this, I think America will try and hit some country or the other just to get over its humiliation. So that is quite possible. But America will no longer be the raging bull it has been so far. Countries which have some dignity and self respect will stand up. Even European countries, which were submitting to every ridiculous demand and outrageous demand of Trump, they will also have to think that by agreeing to every such demand after the Ukraine war started, they have ruined their economy. So now they have to stand up, which some countries in Europe are doing, like France. So Iran is a dividing line of sorts in strategic terms for the world order. The world order will no longer be dictated by America's whims.
Very well said. Thank you very much, Ambassador Dogra, and look forward to reading your book. in the month of July.
Thank
Thank you.
Pleasure. Always a pleasure to be with you, Sanket, and wish you the best. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.